The Zimbabwean government's finances came under the spotlight today as the government warned that it did not have enough money to fund a constitutional referendum and elections, which is set down for this year. Even though there had been some stabilization of the economy after more than a decade in which the country suffered hyperinflation and infrastructure that crumbled as quickly as prices went up, the country is not out of the woods yet. But Finance Minister Tendai Biti rubbished any suggestions that the country's coffers had run dry.
No, it's not. It's a rubbish story. All I said at the press conference is that Zimbabwe doesn't have money to fund the referendum and the election. And that even for any country, whether South Africa, Nigeria, the strain of having a census, a referendum, and an election in a space of 6 months is too much for any budget. So we need help from the international community. That's the point I was simply making.
Now,
so that's, yeah.
In terms of the actual state of Zimbabwe's public finances, you have come to the South African government to ask for a cash injection. Can you give us an update on what the communication between yourselves and Finance Minister for South Africa, Pravin Gordhan, is regarding your request? Is the South African government considering it?
Of course. Well, we are beyond that. At this stage, the officials from both ministries are putting the dots to the relevant documents that are required before these transactions, are finalized by the relevant principals, the two cabinets in the two countries. But part of the reason why I made such a request is that we can then free Zimbabwean resources towards the referendum and the election.
Now, Mr. Biti, are you able to give us a ballpark figure of what it would cost Zimbabwe's government to hold this referendum, and what is the kind of money that you're hoping to raise in order to make this happen?
We need $200 million for the referendum and the election.
And is that money going to come entirely from the international community? Are you saying that as we stand, Zimbabwe doesn't have that kind of cash?
No. Zimbabwe, in my 2018 budget, which I presented in November, we have already provided for Zimbabwe's own part in funding the referendum and the election. It's a Zimbabwean election, it's a Zimbabwean referendum. So surely Zimbabwe too must fund, the process to the best of its abilities. That's what we did with the census. We provided our own resources too. That's what we did with the constitutional making process. We've been funding, we funded 80% of it. So we will put our own money. But quite clearly, if we have to fund it, we can actually fund fully the referendum and the election. We can actually find the $200 million as Zimbabwean government. But the problem is that if we do that, certain programs will suffer, like schools, like hospitals, and so forth. Yeah. So, but because we want to have a balanced program to be able to feed our people, to be able to send our people to school, it's important that donors and the international community help us. So we will put money to the referendum, but we don't want those monies to crowd out. We don't want the referendum and the election to crowd out these other programs of government, because people still have to live and eat even in an election year.
Now, of course, the point that you're making about balancing the priorities is something that you are going to be able to have to take to the international community. Let us look specifically, Mr. Biti, at the amount that you are going to be asking from the international community. Give us the portion that Zimbabwe would be able to contribute from its fiscus.
I can't give you details. But we will present the budgets and we'll present that $200 million. That the government is not run through the press, but we will do that.
If you're speaking about going to the international community, can you give us a breakdown, apart from South Africa, that you have approached for a cash injection? Which countries, which international players is Zimbabwe going to go to ask for this financial assistance?
Any government, whether it's Mozambique, whether it's Zambia, whether it's Malawi, is in constant dialogue with the donors in the international community. Not just on elections. Elections come on one day. But the other program, we've got the programs of health, HIV, chronic diseases, we've got the problem of bursting dams, we've got the problem of food. So these are continuous things. There's nothing unique about elections and and the referendums.
But Mr. Biti, am I to understand you correctly, when you answered my question earlier, you said that you do have the money, but you don't want it to crowd out these other important social programs. What I want to know is what kind of cash, what is the ballpark figure that you're going to be asking for the referendum and the elections?
Yeah,
or are you saying, Mr. Biti, are you saying that...
I've told you that the elections and the referendum require at least $200 million.
Yes.
What the government has put for elections is already of public knowledge. It is in my 2013 budget.
But can you give us the figures, sir?
It's in my 2013 budget.
Now, what portion of the financial assistance that you're asking from the international community, including South Africa, will be spent on elections, and what will be spent on these social programs?
I did not ask for elections money from the South African government.
So can you just give us clarity? The South African, the request to the South African government, that is a request for the normal running of the Zimbabwean budget, its assistance. The second request that you're making to the international community would be to help specifically with the holding of the referendum and the elections. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Now, Mr. Biti, just give us the kind of time frames that we're talking about in terms of what is set down in the roadmap. When are you hoping to be able to make these requests, and when are you able to...
We are a government. We are already in discussions with the international community.
And when are you likely to give some indication of whether you've been able to raise that funds?
What do you mean? When I get the money, I'm not going to stand on a roof and say I've got the money. But I will write letters to thank the capitals that have provided me money. But we've already started engaging.
But in terms of the roadmap, Mr. Biti, there are certain time deadlines. What I'm trying to get at is, by when is it imperative for you to prepare for this referendum to have managed to secure these financial assistance?
We would like the money as soon as possible.
All right, Mr. Biti, a last question. Just in terms of the concerns that have sometimes been raised by other parties in the Zimbabwean situation, for example, the ZANU-PF government has raised the question of the motives of international funding. They often suggest that when international funders are giving money, they have a political agenda, and that there needs to be an important caveat to assistance, that international and foreign countries cannot dictate the political outcomes of Zimbabwe. How do you take that concern raised by ZANU repeatedly into consideration when you're going to the international community to ask them to assist specifically with the referendum and the elections?
Yeah, but it's given. If a donor is going to make a contribution to Zimbabwe, that must have no relation in the capacity and the quality of our people to make a decision in choosing, the party that they want. So that's given.
Are you saying that the concerns that ZANU raises about strings attached to foreign money around elections is something that is not a concern, is something that does not need to be worried about?
Yeah, but look, I'm saying it is right. Whether it's Mozambique, whether it's Swaziland, any donor who makes any funding to any country, it must not be conditional. So it's not a ZANU-PF thing. It's the right thing to do.
So you're saying that the request for the financial assistance specifically for the referendum and the elections must be no strings attached, no conditionality set?
I'm saying as a principle, no donor should give any strings to any other than accounting strings. There should be no political strings, particularly on an important issue that involves people's choices. The ultimate decider as to the political direction of the country are the people of Zimbabwe.
What if the international community suggests that the monies can be manipulated and can go for other purposes except the referendum? What are the kinds of guarantees and conditions that you would give the international community around making sure that the money actually goes for the purpose that it is intended?
We run a proper Ministry of Finance. So that money will never go to any other purpose. It has never gone to any other purpose. And the international community trusts the Minister of Finance and trusts this Minister of Finance in particular. So that's not an issue.
Okay. Minister, I just want to return as a final question to the request to the South African government for the bailout. You said earlier that the various officials are now, putting the final touches to this agreement. Just remind us, and especially for our viewers, what was the figure that was requested by Zimbabwe, and when are you likely, sir, to...
I can't give that figure, and I've never given it publicly.
But can you give us an idea?
I can't.
No,
Minister Pravin and I issued a statement.
Yes, I get that,
when we met in September. So that's the only thing I'm allowed to speak on.
What I want to know, sir, is when are we likely to get a conclusion of this discussions between yourself and the South African government?
I don't know, but hopefully as soon as possible.
When you say as soon as possible, are we talking possibly about the first quarter in this year?
You can make judgment on that.